So right now in medical school, I'm on my pediatric rotation, which is where we take care of these little walking petri dishes that are known as children. And of course, I inevitably got sick at the later half of last week. And as I was throwing my guts up at 1 a.m., I thought to myself, this would probably be a good time to talk about when is it okay and not okay to train while you're sick. And the answer to this question is going to depend completely on what kind of symptoms you're having. So Bear and I here are going to explain to you what symptoms you should avoid working out with and what symptoms are okay. In the field of exercise science and medicine, there are some symptoms that are generally regarded as requiring taking time off from training. These symptoms include fever, muscle aches, chills, a constant productive cough, or vomiting and diarrhea. And it's because training with these symptoms is probably going to do you more harm than good. In 2014, there was a clinical review by Natalie Dick and Jason Deal called Febrile Illness in the Athlete, where they discuss all the problems and risks associated with exercising or training for a sport while you have a febrile illness. And a febrile illness basically covers any kind of acute phase reaction from an infection or any other kind of disease that causes a fever. Something important to know before we continue this video is that hyperthermia, or just overheating, is different from a fever. Hyperthermia can occur when your body's unable to dissipate enough heat to cool itself off. This can happen from dehydration, so you can't sweat and go through evaporative heat loss, or it can happen if you're stuck in a hot environment and you can't just dissipate heat through your skin. A fever is different from this because your body releases a bunch of chemicals that go to your hypothalamus that changes the set point or changes the thermostat in your body. And to oversimplify, this is simply just to help you fight off the infection. So to achieve and maintain this new set point of your body during a fever, your body goes through many changes, one of which is to constrict peripheral blood vessels. Restricting the amount of blood that goes to your periphery is going to help minimize the amount of heat that's lost through convection or just dissipating through your skin. So because of these changes, you're not going to receive good blood flow to your extremities while you're working out. You're not going to be able to cool off very effectively either. Your body's mechanisms for maintaining a normal temperature while you're exercising are no longer going to be in play here. So exercising is going to likely make your fever even worse. Another way your body will maintain a new higher temperature is through increased fluid loss through a decreased production of antidiuretic hormone. Doing this is going to minimize the amount of fluid you have available for evaporative heat loss, so it's going to help you maintain a higher body temperature. So because a febrile illness can already cause a little bit of dehydration and increased body temperature, exercising while you're experiencing these is going to probably worsen both of them. Something else that happens during this acute phase reaction is the direct catabolism of striated muscle tissue. Just to keep this very brief, your body basically breaks down a lot of unneeded tissue during an infection to provide energy for your ramped up immune system. So trying to train during this is certainly going to cause even more muscle protein breakdown, and because most of your excess energy is being diverted to your immune system to fight off this infection, it's very unlikely that you're going to get ever any kind of good recovery from this workout. So essentially what you're doing is aiding the muscle damage and probably not going to recover from it. Something else that'll happen during this reaction is the stroke volume of your heart will decrease, and in order to maintain adequate blood flow, your heart rate will increase. For those of you who don't know, your cardiac output is the amount of blood that gets circulated to your body per unit time. So that'll be your stroke volume, which is how much blood you pump in one pump, times your heart rate, which is how many times it pumps per minute. So to maintain an adequate cardiac output to keep blood going to your brain and all your vital organs, if your stroke volume decreases, you have to actually increase your heart rate. So whenever you exercise, you actually increase the blood flow demands of your body, which means you have to increase your cardiac output to exercise properly. You're probably not going to be able to increase your cardiac output properly if your stroke volume is already low from being sick, so you're going to feel like crap during your workout and not get much done anyway. So besides having a crappy workout, causing some muscle damage, not recovering, there are also some things that are potentially dangerous about exercising with a febrile illness. Something that was noted in a few studies is that having a febrile illness tends to decrease proprioception and fine motor control. So depending what sport you're training for, you could actually potentially injure yourself just by being more clumsy. And even more disturbing are the results of several animal studies showing that vigorous exercise with certain febrile illnesses greatly increases the risk of severe complications and death. So now that we've covered fever, I hope it's clear to everybody, if you have a fever, just take some time off from the gym. It's no big deal. Just stay home and get some rest. Another symptom we want to talk about that probably warrants a break from the gym is a cough. Now, we're not talking about like an occasional tickle in your throat or a little dry cough. We're talking about a consistent, productive cough that you can cough up mucus every time you cough. This is a problem for two reasons. The first is it's going to be hard to breathe while exercising, which is very important, of course. Two is this could be a symptom of a much more serious infection, like pneumonia. So difficulty breathing is sure to ruin any workout that's actually worth doing, and if you have a more serious infection like pneumonia, you need to stay home and go see a doctor anyway. So if you have a productive cough, stay home. And if you're vomiting or having diarrhea, just stay home. I don't think we need to waste time talking about why. Now, there are some symptoms that are probably okay to train with, and these are usually the symptoms of a common cold or upper respiratory tract infection. These are going to include watery eyes, congestion, runny nose, sneezing, fatigue, and a sore throat. So I actually found two really cool studies by Thomas Widener and his colleagues where they infected a group of people with the rhinovirus, which is one of the viruses that causes the common cold. And they had they tested whether it affected their ability to exercise or whether exercise affected their ability to recover from the cold. So the first experiment wanted to test if having the cold actually affected your ability to exercise properly. So basically what they did is they had 55 volunteers complete a graduated treadmill exercise test to volitional failure. Then they had 45 of those people infected with the rhinovirus. They kept 10 of them uninfected as a control. After this infection, they had everyone repeat the exact same treadmill test. And they found some interesting things. They found there was no difference between the infected and uninfected group, and they also found there was no difference among the infected group before and after infection. And of course, they also took some measurements like pulmonary function tests, but basically they found that being infected with the rhinovirus does not significantly change your performance for a treadmill test. Now, anecdotally, whenever I feel kind of under the weather, I feel like my workouts do suffer a little bit. I don't know if this is just a difference between the kind of tests they did versus the kind of workouts I do, or what the problem is, but I tend to dial it back because I feel a little bit weaker. Now, the second study investigated if exercising increases the duration or the severity of the symptoms of the common cold. They again infected 50 people with the rhinovirus, and they had 16 of them just rest, and they had 34 of them assigned to the exercise group. The exercise group did 40 minutes of cardio every other day for 10 days. There were some interesting ways they conducted this study. They actually had people complete a questionnaire every 12 hours about the severity of their symptoms, and they also collected all of their Kleenex tissues and weighed them to see who was producing the most mucus. They actually interestingly found there was no difference between these two groups. So moderate exercise, 40 minutes every other day, seemed to not affect the duration or the severity of a cold. So based on the results of these studies, I think it's safe to say that moderate exercise while having a cold is probably not going to be bad for you, and it's probably not going to affect your performance drastically. Now, these studies do not cover bodybuilding, powerlifting, or weightlifting workouts at all, but I think it's safe to say that some of the same conditions would apply. So if you're applying this information to your bodybuilding or powerlifting training, it's probably wise to scale back the intensity and volume a little bit. I would imagine if you were doing very, very intense or very, very high volume workouts, it would probably affect your performance to some degree and maybe even increase the severity of your cold. Again, I don't have any data to support that, but based on personal experience, I feel like that's the case. It's also important to note that the rhinovirus is not the only cause of the common cold, and these studies only cover the rhinovirus, so I don't know if maybe having an adenovirus infection would be very different than having a rhinovirus infection as far as exercise goes. But I think it's reasonably safe to assume that if you have another viral infection with similar symptoms, these same conditions would apply to exercising with those. Now, just because we've said it's safe to work out with a cold does not mean you should go into a public gym and just spray virus all over everybody while you're sick. Whenever you have a cold, you're contagious through spreading respiratory droplets for the first few days you're having symptoms. And everyone in the gym is huffing and puffing and mouth breathing because they're out of breath and lifting weights, so you're going to give them all a cold. If you have a cold, do some push-ups at home or have a home gym like I have, or find some way to work out without ruining everybody else's week. And remember, taking a week off from lifting weights is not even a big deal. We have data showing that taking a week off from working out does not even measurably change your muscle mass. At the very worst, you might have a small drop in strength that'll immediately come back once you start training again. So if in doubt, or if you're contagious, just stay home, take a little rest. It's not going to be a big deal. All right, so to summarize, don't even think about going to the gym if you have a fever, muscle aches, chills, vomiting, diarrhea, or a productive cough. Working out while you have these is going to probably hurt your progression in the gym, going to make your symptoms much worse, and it's even potentially dangerous. You can probably exercise if you're having upper respiratory or cold infections like sneezing, watery eyes, congestion, runny nose, or a little sore throat. If you're feeling under the weather with these symptoms, it would probably be smart to kind of scale your workouts back, go a little less intense and a little lower volume. And just because you can exercise does not mean you have to. Taking a week off from the gym is going to have no long-term effect on your strength and muscle size. I promise you, you will not lose any of your hard-earned gains. And finally, if you're contagious, be courteous, keep your sick self and your sick germs at your own house. Alright guys, thanks for watching the video. Me and Bear really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like. If you want to see more stuff like this, go ahead and subscribe. And as always, have a great dang day.